Hey friends, thanks so much for tuning in. I am really excited to have on the line an independent journalist from Australia. In fact, he lives on the east coast of Australia. His name is Phillip Watt, and Phillip sent me an email not long ago saying, I'm open to coming on your show to bring some rationality to the Trump train. And he also sent me an article called, Do the People or the Elite Have the Trump Card? And it's a great article. I posted it. We're going to talk about it right now. Phillip, welcome.
Thank you very much, Sean. Good morning from Australia. I know it's afternoon for you over there.
Yeah, it's afternoon here. And what time is it there? About 6 a.m.?
6 a.m., mate. It's the coffee's just kicking in as we speak.
All right. Well, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed you sound, and we'll get off to the races here. Phillip, were you able to watch the third and final presidential debate on Wednesday night?
Yes, I did.
I'm very eager to get your thoughts on it. Guys, I think this is going to be an interesting conversation because although Phillip is an independent journalist and a writer in Australia, he very much cares about this election. The whole world is watching because it's very clear that this election has global implications, especially with all the warmongering coming from the Democratic Party and Hillary Clinton herself. All right, what did you make of the debate, and what do you make of this Trump train, Phillip? What's your angle on this?
Well, Trump has positioned himself by default as the leader of the revolution. In his speech in Florida, he made it pretty clear that the corrupt political establishment is the target of himself and his movement, or the movement as he described it.
Our movement is about replacing a failed and corrupt, and when I say corrupt, I'm talking about totally corrupt, political establishment with a new government controlled by you, the American people.
And they're big shoes to fill. Now, when we discuss what's going on with Trump's approach to revitalizing our system in a way that's going to be conducive to the health and happiness of the people and the environment, we need to really look at what his policy stance is and what he is prepared to do.
This is not simply another four-year election. This is a crossroads in the history of our civilization that will determine whether or not we, the people, reclaim control over our government.
In terms of the debate, he, I think, positioned himself not as the leader of the revolution in that third debate. It was more playing the line of the public discourse. He obviously spoke about some pretty clear and damning truths about Clinton, particularly her foundation, the emails, the WikiLeaks scandals, and just her general credibility and trustworthiness. But he certainly didn't, I guess, continue what he was, what he really put forward, both subtly and explicitly, in that speech in Florida. Essentially, there's a huge amount of independent researchers and independent media organisations that are supporting Trump. And personally, as we discussed in the pre-interview, that I'm not pro-Trump or anti-Trump. I'm pro-truth and freedom. And I think that's the most simplest way to look at this from an objective angle, because it does concern us over here in Australia and all around the world. Middle East, there's millions of lives at stake here, including not just with the military and imperialistic approach to the US, but also the economic and other aspects, such as the TPP. Now Clinton has withdrawn her support for the TPP, but we know that's a lot of crap. It is a multi-trillion-dollar deal that is at stake in this election. So it's those sorts of aspects of Trump's campaign that have really drawn in a huge amount of people. Now, let me just say a disclaimer. It's very possible that Trump and even people like Putin, who seem to be anti-globalists, anti-New World Order, are somewhat controlled opposition. It is definitely a possibility. We really don't know at the core of what Trump and people like Putin are actually standing for. They're saying the right things. They're saying amazing things in certain ways. They're not telling the ultimate truths, obviously. If you really want to know about the truth and around what's going on through the Truth and Freedom networks, you're not getting it from Trump or Putin, but you're getting certain truths. And that's what's been so attractive about them.
We will vote to put this corrupt government cartel out of business and out of business immediately.
Now, whether or not Trump started off as a genuine opposition to what is going on in the corruption and the hijacking of our system or not, I don't know. He may have actually, he's obviously met with some high-profile globalists during this process. So that may or may not be concerning. But he may have started off thinking, well, I'd like to genuinely try to make America great again. He may not have. If he didn't, he may have learned during the process that, hang on, this is bad. He's probably gone through an enlightenment, or some of the truths that he probably wasn't aware of is probably been elucidated through this campaign that he's done for the last year or so.
The Clinton machine is at the center of this power structure. We've seen this firsthand in the WikiLeaks documents, in which Hillary Clinton meets in secret with international banks to plot the destruction of U.S. sovereignty in order to enrich these global financial powers, her special interest friends, and her donors.
I really don't know in terms of whether or not, ultimately, I don't want to give more power or more credit to what this power structure, this power pyramid deserves. So by saying that Trump, Putin and others are controlled opposition, that is a big leap when we really don't know. But it's something that we definitely need to consider in terms of not giving up our power and sort of putting it into another person, another leader, to fulfill what we need to fulfill, because the people always have the ultimate trump card anyway. With or without Trump, the people have got the ultimate trump card, which is the numbers. And if we exercise that gift, that natural gift for us to organise and mobilise in a way that's going to be effective at bringing back some honour and integrity and just general common sense to what's going on in the outside world, we could literally do that overnight, which is why I would love to see us put our differences to the side, be it small or large differences, and unify to some degree to really make this change, this transformation, an effective, efficient, and one that's not going to have a massive impact on the lives of the people in a negative way.
All right. Well, let me weigh in with one thought here as it pertains to controlled opposition. You said that you're not sure, and nobody can be sure, if Putin and Trump are controlled opposition. Some would argue that these two men are just playing their roles on the world stage. I think that's a very myopic view, and I think it's hard to say that too, because so many people would say that it's naive to buy into any of this as being true, that Putin and Trump are standing in opposition to this New World Order system. But let's look at the facts. Open Society, George Soros' foundation, was banned from Russia by Putin for being bad for the country. Soros is clearly aligned, as WikiLeaks has shown us, with Clinton. You're right about the TPP. Clinton will say whatever it takes to get elected, and once she's in the White House, she'll do whatever her puppet masters want her to do. And clearly, she is her treachery is now clearly defined, and the list continues to grow by the day thanks to WikiLeaks. So I think we do need to look at the facts. What are these men saying? Now, Trump has recently said, drain the swamp, and he came out with 5 new points, one of which are term limits for members of Congress. Of course, that gets the establishment very upset because they want the status quo to continue. So I guess my question to you is, based on the things that Trump is clearly saying, quantifiable things like he will not put secret trade deals and treaties above America's interests. What do you think about Trump based on the things he has actually said?
The most powerful weapon deployed by the Clintons is the corporate media, the press. Let's be clear on one thing. The corporate media in our country is no longer involved in journalism. They're a political special interest, no different than any lobbyist or other financial entity with a total political agenda, and the agenda is not for you, it's for themselves.
He is saying the right things in many ways, and he might be saying those things from an authentic position. There's no doubt that he's been played by the media as a divide and conquer strategy, regardless if he's a part of that process or not. The media has clearly been shown to be biased for Clinton versus Trump. But let's be straightforward about this. The elite, the criminal cabal, know that there is a huge threat by the awakening community. In fact, the latest Gallup poll indicated that the trust in mainstream media has once again plummeted. I think it was something like 32%. For having a good amount of trust in the media.
Well, I think in this country it's closer to 6% approval rating for the mainstream media. Below 10% at any rate. And actually, the fact that you're in Australia looking at this from the outside, I think is very interesting. Are you aware of how slanted the media is in this country? Are you getting the same exact dialectic from the mainstream media in Australia?
Pretty much, yeah. We are just a lapdog of the mainstream narratives that get designed out of the oligarchical system of America. So we just get the same crap spewed over and over again. But I certainly don't see the depths of some of the TV advertising and other sorts of advertising that happens around this campaign and in other areas. So, but I've tried to look and see what I guess the narrative is, and it's clearly been anti-Trump, pro-Clinton. But from just to take a step back from all that, I look at it and think, well, could this be just another approach to divide the independent media, which the independent media has been divided through this process? You've got pretty much anti-Trump and pro-Trump independent researchers, and that is split into many shards, a really good network that was essentially identifying the truth. So regardless if he is controlled opposition or not, he's certainly been capitalised on as a effective divide and conquer strategy. But I just want to go back to what Trump does say, because that was the question, and he does talk about some amazing things.
This election will determine whether we're a free nation or whether we have only the illusion of democracy, but are in fact controlled by a small handful of global special interests rigging the system, and our system is rigged.
But has he talked about electoral reform? Now, I know from a personal standpoint that I've got to be strategic with the way that I share information through my audience and through my networks, because I go into deep esoteric territory on in many ways, and it's not an easy thing to describe, and can be not a smart approach to keeping your audience engaged. So he certainly has to be strategic with the information that he does share. But he isn't talking about electoral reform to end the two-party illusion of choice tyranny that needs to occur.
Our great civilization, here in America and across the civilized world, has come upon a moment of reckoning. We've seen it in the United Kingdom, where they voted to liberate themselves from global government and global trade deals and global immigration deals that have destroyed their sovereignty and have destroyed many of those nations. But the central base of world political power is right here in America. And it is our corrupt political establishment that is the greatest power behind the efforts at radical globalization and the disenfranchisement of working people. Their financial resources are virtually unlimited. Their political resources are unlimited. Their media resources are unmatched. And most importantly, the depths of their immorality is absolutely unlimited.
That's just, that one of the most fundamental things that he needs to do to move forward. In fact, Robert David Steele, I interviewed him several months ago, and he's outlined in Counterpunch a really good series of steps Trump needs to take to really bring back that honour to the government. But again, he is talking about the Constitution, and that's obviously one of the most, I guess, one of the documents that is most aligned to natural law that has ever been created. So that needs to be honoured, which he is doing. His discussions around 9/11, obviously he hasn't gone and talked about going into a deep sort of independent investigation as to what really happened with 9/11, and he's also not referencing the US role or the certain factions within the US government's role in the creation and the funding of ISIS. All he's talked about is the big vacuum left by Clinton and ISIS was created. Well, we know that ISIS came from Al-Qaeda. All of these rebels have been financially and logistically supported by whoever is doing sort of managing the operations within that area of the world. What about the Federal Reserve? He hasn't talked about disassembling the Federal Reserve. This is something that needs to obviously happen. We need to bring back honour to our monetary system, and design it in a debt-free way, which actually is beneficial to all of us and our natural systems, not just the oligarchical power pyramid. Then there's the war on drugs. I mean, he's talked about getting rid of a lot of the drug dealers and whatnot, and obviously there's some pretty crazy groups and gangs that have formed around the illegal sale of drugs, and that's a direct consequence of the war on drugs. The war on drugs is absolutely socially destructive on so many levels, and it needs to end, and we need to bring back some basic common sense when it comes to exercising the individual liberty of people, including getting access to natural and cheap medicines. And once again, like this should have been a transformation that happened a long bloody time ago. So if you're going to stand up for the truth, you need to make sure that you exercise, and freedom, you need to exercise individual liberty in terms of health and also the free choice people have to participate in to take any substance they really want. Yeah. Then there's obviously, I basically say that there's a little phrase that I use when discussing what we need to focus on in terms of the Truth and Freedom Network, and that is the 4 M's. Management, and that obviously refers to government and other infrastructure. Media, obviously the corporate media has completely sold out, and there's absolutely no honour. Again, the honour is lacking, and common sense is lacking on a bloody very widespread scale. So there needs to be a complete reform around what's going on in media and how information is disseminated to society. And that's where the independent media steps in. It has stepped in and is now fulfilling the gap that the corporate media has left. Then there's medicine. So when I reference medicine, it is also about food. We've got a chemical-rich, toxin-rich food supply. All this crap's being sprayed on it. It's being injected into it. Our water supply is contaminated. There's a whole massive series of issues when it comes to the ill health that our food supply and water supply is creating. And that obviously leads into the pharmaceutical monopolies and how they've completely turned our medical and health system into one that is, as the saying goes, creates customers, not cures. And all these other things are naturally, all these natural things are suppressed. There's also the general, like in Australia, they're legalising marijuana for medical use finally, but it's going to be done through one of the pharmaceutical monopolies. And as far as I understand, it's going to be a genetically modified version. Now, that is just absolutely insane. Again, this corporatocracy has a stranglehold on all of our vital public infrastructure, and this needs to be addressed, and it needs to be addressed by the people soon. The other M, what was it? The management, media, medicine, and obviously money. In Australia, we had a really good example of a public central bank, a truly public central bank. It was the Commonwealth Bank in Australia between about 1910 and 1924 or 5. A guy by the name of Dennis Miller ran it, a banker, but he did it for the people. He actually funded a lot of infrastructure and World War I, and started off with $10,000 and built a lot of prosperity in our country. And as Ellen Brown describes, I'm a big fan of public banking. I think that infrastructure should be used for the benefit of the community and the environment, period. There is no need for all this hoarding within the financial sector. That needs to be reinvested on a community level. But Ellen Brown, talked about the perfect example of the Australian Commonwealth Bank in that time period. But then Dennis mysteriously died unexpectedly. I mean, draw whatever conclusion you want from that. But the Commonwealth Bank that was then assigned a panel and reabsorbed back into the existing banking infrastructure connected to England back in the day. So, but we do need to look at the monetary system. Obviously, there's a whole series of issues when it comes to the death of the fiat system, the death of the petrodollar, the entire meltdown of the global economy at the moment, stagnation. But, you know, we've been concerned around a collapse for many years now, and they always seem to pull out a magical rabbit of the hat to some degree. So I have no strict prediction about what's going to unfold from here in terms of that, but we certainly are on shaky ground. So ultimately, yeah, Trump is saying some good things.
The only thing that can stop this corrupt machine is you. The only force strong enough to save our country is us. The only people brave enough to vote out this corrupt establishment is you, the American people.
But it's nowhere near what he needs to do. Nowhere, absolutely nowhere near it. That could be strategy. It might be his intention to keep it quiet for a while until he potentially gets into power and enact whatever he needs to do. But this is where we step in. The independent media, the people need to hold these leaders accountable, these so-called leaders accountable, including Trump, for what really needs to occur. And that's where I would love to see a unification process. But whether or not we'll do it, well, you know, at the moment we're very fragmented and there doesn't seem to be too much cohesion.
Yeah, well, let me jump in and say one thing. I'm going to read this from your article, Do the People or the Elite Have the Trump Card? Because I think if you read between the lines, I've heard Trump say almost exactly this, and you and I and he are in agreement on this, because standing in support of this system, the status quo, is Hillary Clinton. You wrote, the banksters and the corporate oligarchs have turned the system into a corporatocracy, where those with the money and power control the direction of governmental policy and procedure. In stride, the money supply, banking, and a plethora of other vital public infrastructure have been stolen from the people and used to further enrich the thieves who took it from us.
The corrupt establishment knows that we are a great threat to their criminal enterprise. They know that if we win, their power is gone, and it's returned to you, the people. Will be. The dark clouds hanging over our government can be lifted and replaced with a bright future. But it all depends on whether we let the corrupt media decide our future, or whether we let the American people decide our future.
You're right. End the Fed, end the Rothschild central banking scheme. That's really the head of the pyramid. That's the eye at the head of the pyramid, at the top of the pyramid. And that's ultimately what we need to defeat and destroy if we're ever to regain our liberty. That goes for you guys in Australia. That goes for we the people here in the United States. And I think the problem is that the general public is still too ill-informed to know what to demand and to know what to fix this system, to know what measures need to be taken to fix this system. So what Trump tries to do is keep it fairly basic. This idea of term limits for Congress is one great idea. It needs to happen. That would avoid having people like John McCain and Lindsey Graham sitting in Washington, D.C. for 30 years, destroying the Constitution, taking us into endless unconstitutional wars of aggression. If Hillary Clinton gets into the Oval Office, Philip, we have the very real potential of entering a hot war in Syria and possibly in the Ukraine with Russia, which could lead us into World War III. So, if given the choice between these two people, Trump and Clinton, one of whom is hell-bent on taking us into World War III, and one of whom says we should talk with the Russians and have a dialogue, does it not stand to reason that those of us with rational minds would want to support the man who wants to keep us out of World War III?
Absolutely. That's the risk you got to take. There is no other option. There are many people who they're anarchists and they want zero government and have this ideal sort of perception on how we should move forward. But at the end of the day, the system isn't going anywhere anytime soon. Governments aren't going anywhere anytime soon, and neither is Trump or Clinton. So Trump is saying the right things in terms of there's nothing wrong. You know, if Russia and America go along, wouldn't be a bad thing.
Right.
That's clearly not a bad thing, and that is definitely a better choice than. I mean, Clinton is obviously the biggest establishment puppet and clearest establishment puppet I've ever personally seen. The independent media have done a fabulous job of exposing what the sort of her legacy, what she really stands for. It's just amazing. Does Trump, is it strategy, or is he just not really aware of? Is he going through a learning process himself about all this? He's been in his own elite club for many years. And he might not be completely connected with what the Truth and Freedom Network really is about. And this might be a learning process where he is starting to understand what may need to be done. But when it comes to the choice between Trump and Clinton, unfortunately, there's nothing else at this point in time. But that's why it's important to make the best possible choice in this situation, but hold him accountable for it as well.
Yeah. Well, Donald Trump has said that he does support the medical use of marijuana, and he is, I think, anti-big pharma to the extent that he's totally against the lobbying and the destruction of policy and the destruction of the rule of law in Washington, D.C. because of lobbying and lobbyists. And one of the other things he said recently, in addition to term limits for Congress, he said he wants to ban people who served in the government from immediately then becoming lobbyists or consultants to these same corporations. Again, it is exactly what has systemically destroyed our system, is this revolving door of fascism between big corporations and government. That's why we're in the situation we're in. And that's why Hillary Clinton is so dangerous for the world and for the future of this country, because she is exactly a fascist. She is the epitome of a fascist. She's the epitome of a person who serves two masters. She claims to serve the people, but she really serves the oligarchs. And WikiLeaks has made that painfully clear. And before I let you go, I just want to get your thoughts on this. This idea that she again espoused in the debate the other night, that it's Russia trying to influence our elections, is the biggest bunch of BS in the world, and I think Trump really dropped the ball on calling her out, because what she and the DNC and the mainstream media are doing is they're conflating this issue, this idea that WikiLeaks is getting its information from Russia, and they've provided no evidence that that's true, but they conflate it and they make the American people believe it's true. And what Trump should have said is, okay, let me get this straight. You are calling out WikiLeaks because they're doing what? They're revealing your corruption. Why don't we focus on the corruption and the emails and all the proof of your corruption, as opposed to you conflating this nonsense that Russia's behind it, trying to influence the elections because somehow they want me in the office instead of you. It's absolute ridiculousness, and he should have hung her out to dry on it.
Yes, so I was very disappointed watching the many missed opportunities in that debate. I mean, Trump certainly did present himself with a calm temperament and tried to position himself as a leader in the eyes of the people, and not get too lost in emotion, so to speak. So he really did present himself well in that sense. He made it very clear that he has issues with the whole election process. And if that is true, then obviously electoral reform must be on his mind to a certain degree. But when it comes to calling out Hillary for her role, a criminal role in so many areas, how many fingers she's got in the pie, and her no-fly zone implications, and just her general connection to this corrupt political establishment, which he has completely called out, I think he did drop the ball. But it's very difficult. I mean, I remember looking at a bit of a difference between Hillary and Trump. There was a bit of a yellow filter on Hillary, and it seemed like it was purposely designed to make her look a little bit more angelic, or, connecting with the emotional, the heart center of the people. That felt like it was purposely designed. It also felt like she was looking down and had some sort of view or notes or information.
Yep.
And then at the end, when the moderator said, we're just going to have a random closing statement, even though everybody just didn't want to agree to it, she seemed pretty straight on the money there. And almost like she was prepared for it. But Trump, Trump, when it comes to ad hoc, just talking naturally, has missed many opportunities, but has also capitalised on many as well. So that's just a stage situation, I guess. His speech in Florida, that was just spot on in so many ways. And I really look forward to hearing what he has to say in his sort of upcoming rallies, to see how he continues that narrative, continues that dialogue that, yes, I understand that the American people are pissed. They are pissed. They feel disenfranchised. They understand to a certain degree, a huge amount of people understand at least to a certain degree, that the system is embedded in deep corruption. They might not understand the depths of how that goes and what details there are around that, but they get it. They get that the people, the government made for and by the people, is long dead, and this whole system has been turned into a control matrix. It's going further and further into totalitarianism, to the point where this covert game of global governance and a planetary control system has been completely exposed for anybody to see if they look in the right places. And that there needs to be a response by the people to ensure that it really comes down to one thing, Sean, and that is it's control versus freedom. So what are we going to choose? And if Trump is a true representative of freedom, then we need to make sure he actually understands what that means.
Yeah, well said. And I think he does. I think in his heart he does. Of course, I can't see what really lies in his heart. As I've said before in videos, I can just judge him by the things he's saying. And he stands in stark contrast to the global criminal known as Hillary Clinton. Well, I'm really pleased to have met your acquaintance, Philip. Thanks for reaching out to me. Can you tell people how they can find your original writings?
Yeah, my work is generally captured at pushingthetippingpoint.com. My personal development website is vitalityguidance.com. I've got my Facebook, Phillip J Watt. I spend a little bit of time on there, but I also have a YouTube channel called The Conscious Society. And I've interviewed some amazing people over the last year, really try to capture a narrative, and not just around what's happening societally, but also in terms of connecting with the self and undertaking some health transformations, and also what's going on in the esoteric territory as well. Thanks for having me on, Sean. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, the pleasure's all mine, and I didn't know about your YouTube channel. That's called The Conscious Society, correct?
Correct, yeah.
Excellent. All right. Well, I'm going to post some of your interviews then over at my other website, thephaser.com. So, guys, check out thephaser.com, and I'll make sure that we post some of Philip's interviews over there. Our guest today has been Phillip J Watt, independent journalist from Australia. Philip, thanks so much.
Thank you, Sean. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. And, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. We appreciate your support at sgtreport.com. Real news, 24/7.